The year was 1868, and Arizona's frontier was a place where the earth seemed to bleed with every sunrise. Dust lay thick on the land, caking the boots of men who carried rifles heavier than their consciences. Coyotes sang at dusk, but tonight their song was drowned out by a sharper sound. Gunfire. Ethan Carter heard it first. He was the older of the two brothers, broad-shouldered, his face set like stone beneath the brim of his hat. Years of hardship had carved deep lines around his eyes, but there was no mistaking the steadiness with which he scanned the darkened hills. His horse stamped nervously, nostrils flaring. Ethan shifted in the saddle, tightening his grip on the reins. Luke Carter, 2 years younger, carried none of Ethan's calm restraint. He was restless, quick to action, and just as quick to temper. He rode a pace ahead, eyes darting, jaw tight with the thrill of whatever storm lay ahead. Where Ethan had patience, Luke had fire. Together, they balanced each other, though not without sparks. Gunfire, Ethan muttered, low, East Ridge, by the trading post. Luke didn't need to be told twice. He dug his spurs, and his horse bolted forward in a spray of dirt. Ethan cursed under his breath, but followed. The trading post came into view like a scar across the landscape. Lanterns swung wildly inside, shadows moving quick against the clapboard walls. The crack of rifles split the night. A scream, shrill, piercing, small, cut through it all. The brothers pulled their horses short, eyes narrowing. A girl, no more than 10 years old, barefoot, dark hair tangled, face streaked with dirt and blood. She ran out from behind the post, stumbling as 3 men gave chase. Bounty men. Ethan knew the type. Ragged beards, coats stiff with sweat and greed. They weren't after survival. They were after coin. And coin could be made selling Apache children to mines, rail crews, or worse. Luke spat into the dirt. Son of a... He raised his rifle. Wait, Ethan growled. Think. But waiting wasn't Luke's gift. His rifle barked, flames spitting from the barrel. The lead man pitched forward, face first in the dust. The girl froze, wide-eyed, caught between terror and disbelief. The other 2 men shouted, guns swinging. Ethan fired clean and precise. One dropped, clutching his chest. The last man roared, charging toward the girl. Luke kicked free of his saddle, landing hard, rolling once before coming up with his pistol drawn. Run, he barked at the girl. She hesitated, too scared to move. The man lunged, knife flashing. Luke fired point blank. The man's body crumpled at the girl's feet, dust rising like smoke. Silence followed. Heavy, the smell of gunpowder hung thick, bitter in their throats. Ethan swung down, crouched before the girl. She trembled like a wild colt, eyes sharp and untrusting. Apache eyes. She stared at them, breathing ragged. We ain't here to hurt you, Ethan said, voice low, steady. You're safe now. Luke holstered his pistol, his grin crooked. Safe as she can be, anyhow. The girl didn't speak. She only clutched a ragged piece of cloth she wore like a shield and looked from one brother to the other. Trust wasn't something she knew. Ethan exhaled slowly. Trouble had just landed in their laps, and neither of them would turn away. The ride back to the ranch was long, shadows stretching across the land like grasping hands. The girl clung to Ethan's saddle, small fingers digging into leather. Luke rode beside them, restless energy keeping him upright though exhaustion weighed on them all. The Carter ranch sat lonely on the far edge of a wide plain, its fences stretching crooked where the land broke against hills. A barn stood half-built from last spring's effort, weather-beaten, stubborn against the wind. It was no fortress, but it was home. When they brought her inside, the girl hesitated at the threshold. Her bare feet left faint prints in the dirt. She lingered like she expected a blow, or a trap. Luke crouched, pulling off his hat, sweeping his messy hair back. Ain't much, kid, but it's warm. She looked past him at Ethan. Ethan nodded once, gentle. She stepped in. They gave her bread, though she only nibbled. They gave her water, though she sipped with suspicion. She sat by the fire, small frame shaking, eyes darting to every sound. Name? Ethan asked softly. No reply. She can't be more than 10. Luke muttered, dropping into a chair. What in hell were they thinking? Selling a child like a calf at market. Ethan's jaw tightened. They weren't thinking, just counting coin. Hours passed. The girl didn't speak, but she didn't sleep either. Finally, when Ethan reached to place a blanket over her shoulders, she whispered something. So faint he almost missed it. Annabelle. Ethan crouched closer. That your name? She nodded, dark eyes flicking between them. Annabelle. He'd heard the word before. It meant returns from war. Luke smiled faintly. Annabelle. Fits you. He glanced at Ethan. Bit long for his clumsy tongues. We'll call her Anna. Ethan studied her face. The sharp lines of fear still etched there. Anna. It suited her. Days passed, and Anna began to move like she belonged, though always with hesitation. She fed the chickens. She carried water. She even laughed once when Luke, trying to fix a fence, hammered his thumb and cursed loud enough to send the horses scattering. But the world outside didn't forget. Word spread. 2 rancher brothers, harboring an Apache child. Whispers grew into sharp tongues. A store clerk refused to sell them supplies. A ranch hand warned them, people don't take kindly to that kind of thing. They'll make you pay. And then the sheriff's deputy came. He rode in with dust trailing behind his horse, badge glinting dull in the sun. He swung off, boots heavy against the porch. Ethan stood in the doorway, shotgun resting casual but ready in his arms. Evening, the deputy said. His tone was polite, but his eyes weren't. Word is, you're keeping an Apache girl here. Luke leaned against the post, arms folded, voice sharp. Word travels quick. The deputy's lips twitched. Law's law, and the law says she don't belong here. She belongs where she's safe, Ethan replied, voice flat. Safe? The deputy chuckled. Ain't no such thing for her kind. She'll bring trouble. You know it. His eyes slid past Ethan, trying to catch a glimpse inside. Best hand her over. Let the territory deal with her. Ethan shifted, blocking the view. Ain't gonna happen. The air thickened, heavy with the unspoken. The deputy spat, tugged his reins, and climbed back on his horse. Suit yourselves, he said, but don't say I didn't warn you. He rode off. Dust settled slow. Inside, Anna clutched the edge of the table, staring at Ethan. Her lips trembled. Then, for the first time, she spoke clearly, her voice low, pleading. Don't let them take me. Ethan's throat tightened. He crouched, meeting her eyes. They won't. Luke's grin was gone, replaced by a fire that burned hot in his chest. Not while we're breathing. Night fell heavy. The sky crowded with stars that looked close enough to pluck. The ranch was quiet but tense. Every creak of the windmill a warning. Every howl of a coyote a threat. The brothers sat by the fire inside, shadows flickering across their tired faces. Ethan sharpened his knife, slow, deliberate. Luke cleaned his pistol, metal glinting with each turn. Anna slept nearby, curled beneath a blanket, her breathing shallow but steady. You know what's coming. Luke said finally. Ethan didn't look up. Yeah, they'll come. Maybe not tonight. Maybe not tomorrow. But they'll come. Ethan nodded. The steel in his voice carried the weight of certainty. Then we'll be ready. Silence stretched. The fire popped. Outside, the wind pressed against the windows, whispering of things to come. Ethan leaned back, eyes heavy. We drew our line tonight, brother. Crossing it means blood. Luke smirked, though it didn't reach his eyes. Ain't the first time. Ethan's gaze slid to Anna, small and fragile but alive because of them. She's worth it. Luke's voice softened, rare. Yeah, she is. Anna stirred in her sleep, mumbling. Ethan bent close, catching the faint words. Don't let them take me. The firelight caught his face as he looked to Luke. Neither spoke, but both understood. The Carter brothers had chosen their path, and whatever storm frontier brought, they'd face it with guns drawn, hearts unyielding. The desert did not forgive, and it did not forget. By 1870, 2 years had passed since the Carter brothers had pulled a half-starved Apache child out of the night's jaws. In those years, their ranch had grown, fences stretching wider, cattle numbers climbing. Yet for all the sweat poured into the land, it was not their herds or their fences that folks remembered. It was the girl. Anna had become part of place, moving among the horses and chickens like she had always been there, though a shadow of fear never left her eyes. She had learned English words quick, and quicker still she learned to smile, though she never forgot a glance over her shoulder. The brothers had given her safety, food, a kind of family, but the land around them buzzed with suspicion. At the trading post, men muttered. In the saloon, whispers traveled faster than whiskey. Some saw Anna and spat in the dirt. Others muttered that the Carters were fools. One evening, Luke came in from town with his jaw clenched tight, his knuckles raw. Ethan looked up from where he was oiling his rifle. Picked another fight? Ethan asked flatly. Luke threw his hat down. Didn't pick it. They did. Called her a savage brat. Said we'd bring hellfire down on all of us by keeping her. Ethan said nothing. He only kept working the rifle, though his eyes darkened. Anna, now 12, stood in the doorway, listening. Her hair was longer, her frame taller, but she carried herself with the same mix of defiance and quiet fear. She didn't speak. She never did when the talk turned sharp. That summer, the ranch burned. It was past midnight when the smell of smoke jolted Ethan from sleep. He stumbled out the door, boots crunching dirt, and saw orange flames clawing at the barn side. Luke was already shouting, hauling buckets from the well. Cattle bawled in panic, hooves hammering against fences. The brothers fought the blaze with everything they had, smoke choking their lungs, sparks scorching their clothes. By dawn, the barn was half a skeleton. The cattle survived, but the cost was heavy. Char was still like broken teeth against the pale sky. Ethan stared at the ruin, jaw set hard. He didn't need to guess who had done it. Later that day, a note was found nailed to the gatepost. The words were scrawled in rough hand, the letters carved deep enough to split wood. Hand over the Apache girl, or next time we take more than the barn. Luke ripped the note down, cursing, but Ethan only folded it, slipping it into his coat. His silence spoke louder than rage. Anna stood nearby, clutching the old watch Luke had once pressed into her palm. Her small fingers trembled around it, and in her eyes was a question she did not dare to ask. Would they still fight for me? The threat did not stay on paper. It grew teeth. Men rode near the ranch at night, torches flickering in the dark. Shouts carried across the plain, warnings twisted with hate. Ethan and Luke kept their rifles close, sleeping light, eyes always on the horizon. One afternoon, Sheriff Warren himself rode up. He was a man cut from the same cloth as the desert, weathered, sharp-edged, hard to move. His badge glinted under the sun as he dismounted, his expression carved in stone. "You boys be done right by me before," he said slowly, "but I can't shield you from the whole territory. They think you're harboring danger. They're near ready to string you both up." Luke bristled. "So we're supposed to hand her over like she's a calf for slaughter?" The sheriff's eyes softened a fraction. "Ain't my wish. But sometimes the world don't give us choices we like." Ethan stepped forward. "There's always a choice, and ours is clear." The sheriff sighed, heavy, as though he carried the whole desert's weight. "I'll hold him off as long as I can. But mark me, the longer she stays, the worse it'll be." He mounted up, leaving dust in his wake, and with a silence that pressed heavy on the ranch. That night, Anna sat by the fire, staring into the flames. Ethan watched her, heart caught in a vice. She was 12 now, but her eyes were old, older than any child's ought to be. "Do they hate me?" she asked suddenly. Her voice was barely a whisper, but it cracked like a gunshot in the quiet. Luke shook his head quickly, too quickly. "They're fools. Don't matter what they think." But Ethan did not answer right away. He only stared into the fire, the flames reflected in his tired eyes. He knew the truth. The world outside their walls would never forgive her for what she was born. The decision came with dawn. Ethan rode out to meet an Apache elder he knew, a man who moved at his shadow and carried wisdom in his silence. They spoke little, for the elder understood before Ethan even finished. When Ethan returned, Anna was waiting. She knew. Children always did. Luke's fury broke loose the moment Ethan explained. "You'd send her away? After everything we fought for? After everything we swore? Ethan's voice was rough but steady. We swore to keep her safe. And here she'll never be safe. Anna's eyes filled, though no tears fell. She stood tall, her small shoulders squared, clutching Luke's watch as if it were life itself. The farewell was jagged, each word like a blade. Luke knelt before her, voice cracking as he pressed her small hands in his. Don't forget this place. Don't forget us. Ethan placed his hand on her shoulder. His words were softer, but they cut deepest. When the world changes, find us again. The Apache elder waited at the ridge, his horse still as stone. Anna climbed up, looking back one last time. The brothers stood side by side, rifles slung, faces carved with grief. She raised her hand. They raised theirs. And then she was gone, swallowed by the desert's endless horizon. Time stretched long and cruel after Anna's departure. Seasons rolled by, droughts that cracked the earth, storms that tore the fences, roundups that left muscles aching and backs bent. The Carters built, rebuilt, and built again. Their herd grew, their land spread, but their hearts stayed hollow. The ranch had no laughter now. The firelight seemed colder. Luke threw himself into work with reckless fury, riding hard, fighting harder, drinking too much when the nights got long. He picked fights in town, fists swinging until Ethan dragged him home. He could not stand the quiet. He could not stand the memory of small footsteps on the porch that no longer echoed there. Ethan bore it different. He carried the silence like a stone in his chest. He grew sterner, his voice rougher, his patience thinner. He did not speak of Anna, but some nights Luke caught him staring east, toward the hills where she had vanished. The world did not slow for grief. Apache raids continued. Settlers pushed harder. Treaties were signed, broken, forgotten. The territory bled, and the Carters stood in the middle, unwilling participants in a land that devoured its people. By 1878, 10 years had passed since that night of fire and farewell. The brothers were older, scarred, their hair streaked with gray. Neither had taken a wife. Neither spoke of why, but the truth lingered in every silence. Their hearts had been claimed by a girl who might never return. One stormy night, as lightning ripped across the sky, Ethan woke with a start. In the dream, Anna had stood at the gate, grown tall, her eyes the same but sharper, older. She had whispered the same words she once begged as a child. Don't let them take me. Ethan sat long in the dark, staring at the coals of the dying fire. Luke stirred awake, groaning, and asked what troubled him. Ethan only shook his head, voice low, gravelly. Some promises don't die. They just wait for time to catch up. Outside, the storm roared. Inside, the brothers sat silent, bound by the weight of years, bound by a promise the desert itself seemed to guard. And far off, though they did not know it, the promise was already walking back toward them, carried by the feet of a woman grown from the girl they once saved. The storm rolled in from the east, dragging a curtain of black sky across the plains. Lightning split the horizon, its light glancing off the rifles in the hands of men who had come to take what wasn't theirs. They weren't ranchers, weren't lawmen. They were wolves, thin-eyed and hungry, ready to rip apart the world Sam, Luke, and Ayanna had built. The ranch lay quiet under the hammering rain. Horses stamped nervously in the corral. The cattle bellowed against the wind. In the main house, the fire had burned low, shadows cutting the room into pieces. Ayanna stood by the window, her hair loose, her face pale but set like carved stone. She had known this night would come. Nothing in her life had stayed safe for long. Sam sat at the table, his revolver spread out before him, each bullet checked and polished. His hands were steady, though the storm rattled the shutters hard enough to shake the glass. Luke leaned against the doorframe, rifle across his arms, watching the dark swell gather outside. They'll come soon, Luke muttered. They're already here, Ayanna whispered. She pointed. In the distance, torchlight flared against the storm, bouncing wildly in the wind. A dozen riders, maybe more, were pushing toward the house. Sam holstered his revolver and looked at her. His jaw was tight, eyes burning with something more than fear. This is the last time we run. Tonight we stand. Ayanna's heart clenched. These men, brothers by blood and choice, had sheltered her when she was a hunted child. They had fed her, taught her, and given her a place where her scars could begin to heal. She would not let them bleed alone. "I'll fight too," she said. Sam rose. "No, you stay here. If they breach the door, you run." She stepped forward, fire in her eyes. "I'm no child hiding in the woods anymore. If I must die, I'll die with you." Luke gave her a long look, then nodded slowly. "She's right, Sam. We're 3, not 2. Outside, the riders drew closer, their shouts swallowed by thunder. The first bullet cracked against the barn, splintering wood. The battle had begun. Sam shoved the door open and stepped into the storm, rain running down his face. Luke followed, rifle already lifted. Ayanna stayed behind just long enough to grab the shotgun from the mantel. Then she strode into the night after them, her bare feet sinking into the mud, the storm plastering her dress to her body. The raiders surged forward, their torches glowing like hellfire. Gunshots ripped the night apart. Luke dropped one rider clean out of his saddle, his body tumbling into the dirt. Sam's revolver barked twice, and another man screamed. Ayanna braced the shotgun against her shoulder. She had fired only a handful of times before, but her aim was steady. She pulled the trigger. The blast shook her bones, and a raider's horse reared as the man tumbled down. But there were too many. They kept coming, shadows on horseback, voices snarling through the storm. Bullets hissed past her ears. One struck the porch post inches from Sam's head. Another grazed Luke's arm, blood running warm under the rain. "Back to the barn," Sam shouted. They retreated across the yard, firing as they ran. The barn loomed like a fortress, doors wide. Hay scattered across the floor. They dove inside, slamming the doors shut, shoving barrels and planks across them. The air inside was thick with the smell of hay, horses, and fear. Thunder rattled the roof. The raiders circled outside, voices taunting, promising to burn the whole place down. "They'll torch us out," Luke muttered, pressing his bleeding arm. "Then we end it before they can," Sam said. His eyes found Ayanna. "This is your chance to run. Through the back. You can make the river." Her throat burned, but her voice came out steady. "I told you, I won't leave." The pounding on the barn doors grew louder. With cracked, a torch sailed over the wall of the loft, flames licking across dry hay. Smoke began to rise. Sam's jaw tightened. "Then we fight to the last." The doors burst inward. Raiders poured through, shadows lit by flame, faces twisted with hate. The barn became a storm of gunfire and smoke. Sam's revolver cracked again and again, each shot finding its mark. Luke, pale but steady, worked his rifle like a machine, every bullet driving another man to the dirt. Ayanna reloaded clumsily, hands shaking but determined. She fired into the smoke. The shotgun roared deafening. A man fell, clutching his chest. Another rushed her, knife flashing. She swung the stock of the shotgun into his skull with a sickening crack. The fire spread fast, heat baking the air, smoke choking their lungs. Horses screamed in terror, thrashing in their stalls. The barn was becoming a tomb. "Out the back!" Luke coughed, waving them toward the rear door. They burst through into the rain, flames lighting the sky behind them. Raiders still swarmed, but fewer now, their numbers broken by the brother ferocity. The battle spilled into the mud, lit by fire and lightning. Sam fought like a man who had nothing left to lose. Luke staggered but never fell. And Ayanna, wild, unflinching, stood beside them. Her hair plastered to her face, her voice hoarse with fury as she pulled the trigger again and again. At last, silence fell. The last of the raiders fled into the storm, leaving their dead in the mud. The fire devoured the barn, its crackle loud as a thunder. The 3 of them stood, drenched, bleeding, and gasping. They had survived, but at a cost. The barn was gone, half the herd scattered. And in the mud, Sam cradled Luke's arm, the bullet wound deep. Ayanna knelt beside them, her hand on Luke's shoulder, her face streaked with rain and soot. "We're still here," she whispered. "We're still together." Sam met her gaze, something unspoken burning there. He had seen her as a child they once saved. Tonight, she had proven she was their equal. The storm began to break, leaving only rain and the smell of smoke. The weeks that followed were hard, harsher than any winter before. With the barn gone, The brothers rebuilt by hand, day and night, while Luke healed under Ayana's care. She worked beside them, shoulders sore, hands blistered, never once faltering. She had chosen to stay, not as the frightened girl they once sheltered, but as a woman who belonged. By the time the new barn stood, pride glimmered in Sam's tired eyes. Luke, though scarred, had regained his strength. And Ayana, she had carved her place in the ranch with sweat, blood, and fire. One evening, as the sun sank into the plains, painting the sky in gold and crimson, the three of them stood together by the corral. Silence hung heavy, filled only by the soft snore of horses and the wind in the grass. Sam's voice broke at first, low and rough. "You could have left. You didn't." Ayana looked at him, then at Luke. Her heart thudded, the words long held pressing against her lips. "When I was a girl, you gave me life. You gave me a home. Now I choose to give you mine." Luke's hand tightened on the fence rail. Sam's eyes widened and softened. "You mean," Sam began, but his voice trailed. Her voice did not waver. "I've carried the memory of what you did for me. It's shaped everything I am. 12 years I wandered, searching for who I was meant to be. And now I know I was meant to return, meant to stand with you, not as a child you saved, but as the woman who loves you both." The air thickened, the moment heavy as stone. Sam's throat worked, words slow, careful. "You're asking to bind yourself to us. To both." Ayana stepped closer, her eyes shining in the fading light. "Yes, to both." Luke finally turned, his gaze deep and fierce, holding hers. "It won't be easy. Folks won't understand." "I don't need them to," she said. "I need only you." Sam exhaled long and hard, as though laying down a burden he'd carried too long. He reached out, taking her hand. Luke laid his over hers. For the first time since that night long ago, they were bound, not by fear, but by choice. The horizon swallowed the sun, leaving stars to rise. The ranch stood battered but unbroken. 3 souls stood together, forged by fire, bound by love, ready to face the frontier as one. And so the tale closed, not with a gunshot, but with a vow, because in the end, survival is not just about outlasting the storm. It is about finding someone worth standing in the fire for.